In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit more about building understanding. Because the thing is, when somebody says something, you'll instantly make meaning from what's been said. Your brain is wired that way. It's wired to create a kind of mental model to make sense of what's been said. And it's easy to find yourself reacting off the meaning that you have made, which may not match the meaning that was intended. Things can get lost in translation. In order to communicate in a way that builds connection, what's really important is to have an intention to build understanding, rather than having lots of communication tips and techniques up your sleeve. And you build understanding by being in dialogue. That means seeing each person as an equal partner in the communication exchange. It means having mutual respect and consideration. When you're in dialogue, each person is impacted by the other, which means that if you and I are in dialogue, I'm going to be impacted by what you say, but equally, you're going to be impacted by what I say. We'll be building understanding of each other's model of the world. So being in dialogue becomes an opportunity to see the world as others do, rather than taking their feelings as an attack on you. And you may not agree with what the other person says. And it's not about surrendering your viewpoint. So without dialogue, it's really easy for resentment to build, for a sense of hopelessness to build. Dialogue becomes a kind of enlivening energy exchange between two people. And there are some simple guidelines for building understanding through dialogue. First, wipe your feet on that metaphoric welcome mat. Wipe away any desire to fix, to change, to go into rescue. Set aside your assumptions and your suggestions. Assume that the mental model that you hold is going to be different from the other person's. You're going in to listen with the intention of updating the story that you may hold. So it's about getting curious. And you'll be taking it in turns to speak without interruption. So it's like one person speaks, and when they're ready, they come back to the other. And then the other person can gather what's been said. They'll speak, and then when they're ready, come back to the other person. All the while you're building understanding, kind of gathering and building understanding. It's really important that you only speak from the self. You might be saying things like, I believe that, I think that, I feel that. It's really important that you don't speak into the life of the other person. Tell them what they should be thinking, what they should be saying, what they should be doing. You can raise your concerns, but own them. So when it's your turn to speak, you might say, well, I'm concerned that, whatever, or I'm worried that. So you can bring your concerns, but own them. And you're building understanding between the two of you. And remember, nobody has the monopoly on the truth. There may be times where you might want to invite the other person to say a little bit more so that you can help to build understanding. You might ask them, say something like, do you want to say a bit more about that? Just so that you can really make sure that you're understanding them right. There's also a really useful question, a clarifying question that you can ask. And you do this by repeating back some of the other person's words and asking what kind of. So it might be, what kind of frustrated, or what kind of stuck, or what kind of annoyed. So you're taking their words and using that question just to get a bit more clarity about what they're saying. It's one of the clean language questions that was created by David Grove, and you can find out more about that in my book, The Listening Space. There's a lovely story that was shared with me recently by someone who said that this question, this simple question, clean language question, transform the conversations that she was having with her son, her 10-year-old son. Her son has ADHD and he struggles with the back and forward conversations. So he gets stuck and lost for words. But that question, what kind of, repeating back some of his words, seemed to ignite a spark in him, and he comes alive. And he's finding it much easier to respond. He kind of looks at her and reaches in and pulls out the information when normally he just shuts down. He never says, I don't know. It just keeps the conversation going in a very casual, light way. She said, it's not like an interrogation. He knows I'm listening because I've repeated back some of his words. So that question, as a way of inviting more, has really helped to keep that dialogue going, to help build understanding, to invite him to say a little bit more. And there are ways of blocking conversation. Probably the best way of blocking conversation is to go on your mobile phone, to get distracted, to scan through your texts, WhatsApp messages. The great way of blocking dialogue, blocking that building of understanding. Looking away, obviously being distracted, being busy in other tasks. And finally, telling the other person, speaking into their life, is a great way of block. It doesn't invite more a conversation. It doesn't invite a building of understanding. So in the next video, I'm going to share a story with you from a mother who used this approach of building understanding with her teenage son.